Hi and welcome to the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast for athletes, coaches and professionals who want to achieve their goals faster. I'm David Charlton and I'll be sharing proven methods from leading athletes, coaches and experts that will help you get the most from your talent. Today's show is sponsored by Functional Intelligent Training, who are a sports injury clinic located in Gosforth near Newcastle upon Tyne and specialise in athlete development, nurturing future champions, strength and conditioning support and excellent rehabilitation services. Happy New Year everyone! It's New Year's Day when this episode was released. How was your Christmas break? Mine, like a lot of people's, was pretty quiet, where I got a lot of joy from being around our two boys and seeing their happy and excited faces. Also getting out for runs and on bike rides was a lot of fun too. Are you looking forward to 2021? Today I'm excited to be in the company of an Olympian, long distance runner Aly Dixon, who holds the world 50-kilometre record. Quite a feat. Aly shares some great insights into what it takes to compete at such a high level, as well as sharing some advice that we can all benefit from to take into 2021. Hi Aly, thanks for taking the time out to chat to me today. Would you be able to just share some background about yourself to the listeners that don't know you?
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for inviting me on. I'm Aly Dixon, born and bred in Sunderland. I'm a Team GB marathon runner and I'm also the world champion over 50 kilometres and the world record holder for that event. I've been running now, pretty much all my life, but joined the club 31 years ago. And it took quite a while to kind of rise to the top sort of thing. I didn't get a first international call up until I was 29. And then first GB call up when I was 31. And since then, I've went on to compete in 6 World Championships, 4 European Championships, 2 Commonwealth Games and Olympic Games. So not too bad for a wee lass from Sunderland.
It's quite impressive. So what's the why sort of thing around you running? How did you get into it? What do you love about it?
Like I said, it's in my blood. Like literally from the day I was born, I was immersed in running. My dad was a marathon runner himself, and during my childhood, we kind of spent weekends and holidays and that just being dragged around watching him do races, which it wasn't the most entertaining as a little kid. But to keep us out of trouble, I would do the fun runs that were often involved in these races. So, I enjoyed them and it was something to do, but it was never, whilst I did enjoy the running, it was never really my first love. I was into gymnastics and swimming and, I was just that typical kid that did every sport. Never very good at anything, just loved being active. But running, I joined the club when I was 11. And again, it was like a random, my friend at school was a member and she'd said that they were going to Flamingo Land on a trip with the athletics club. So I decided I wanted to go to Flamingo Land. So I joined the club. And, it's quite apt because it's been a roller coaster ride since then. But what I did find was, I got involved in the club and I started going along there 2-3 times a week. And I had a social scene there while my friends were there. And I just fell in love with the feeling of running and, the simple act of running. And like I say, I was never very good as a kid, kind of, up to about 17, 18. I was nearer to the back of the field in races than to the front. But I just loved being out there. I loved cross country and running through the mud and getting dirty. I hate it now. But I had this deep down passion to run and it's just carried us all the way through. I've been running now for 31 years and without enjoying it and loving it, I don't think I would have been able to last that long and go through kind of some of the tougher times that I've had. And at the end of the day, it is just the pure joy of being out there, the freedom it gives you, kind of the solitude it gives you, and just that deep down passion for the sport.
Have you had many moments in where you've sort of fallen out with the sport at all?
Yes, I had a very big, kind of a very dark period where Glasgow Commonwealth Games in 2014, I had to stop mid-race because I tore a tendon in my ankle. And I was in really, really good shape. I was leading the race for the first 10 miles. By the time I got to 14 miles, I was just in so much pain I couldn't carry on. And at that moment in time, my world had literally ended. I was out there representing England, millions watching on TV, friends and family on the course cheering us on. And I couldn't do myself justice. And to me, I'd let everybody down. I wasn't bothered about letting myself down so much, but I'd let my parents down, I'd let friends and family down, I'd let my country down. And I was just curled up in a ball in floods of tears, and I just wanted that wood to open up and swallow us. And, I decided then that I'd never want anything more to do with running. I was never running ever again, to the point where I threw my trainers out in Glasgow and came back without them. And it was quite tough because I was working at a sweatshop at the time, which obviously is a running store specialist. So I would go in and do my shifts in there, and people would come in and I'd be serving them, and they'd say like, "Oh, do you run yourself?" And I'd be like, "Nah, no, I don't run." And for a few weeks I just said, I'm never running again. It's hurt us too much this time. But then I started to come round, I started to get itchy feet, and I ran the Great North Run with the masses, with all the 52,000 ordinary people. And that just reminded us why I love to run. I did the full Great North Run experience, getting on the metro like sardines and getting off a Haymarket and walking along the start and just seeing everybody, all different ages, shapes, sizes, a lot of them have the signs on the back saying why they're doing it, because they've overcome this or they've lost somebody and that. And most of them, they'd never ever imagine, probably 6 months beforehand, that they'd be doing that, but they go out there and they do it. And that just really, I just absolutely loved every second of that run, and it just really reminded us why I run and what it is that I love about it. And from then on, I was back in. The heart was taken again, and luckily it was, because otherwise I would have lost out on a lot over the last 5 years.
I'll bet. I know what you mean about the Great North Run, and I've done it a fair few times myself. And like you say, it's just that atmosphere, the buzz. I can imagine, like for yourself, obviously, the commitment levels that you have to put into your day-to-day training, and then the pressure with big races. I suppose doing a fun run, if you like, will be completely different.
Normally when I do the Great North, I'm in the elite field, and the elite women get set off kind of 20 minutes, half an hour before everybody else. So we don't get the same atmosphere. For me, it's running along pretty much a deserted dual carriageway between Newcastle and South Shields, and it's not the most inspiring thing. But in the Northeast, it's such an icon, and it was my chance to do it with the masses. And, I've spoken to Brendan Foster since then and said, it's brilliant that you invented this 40 years ago, but, thank you from a personal point of view, because if it wasn't for this race, I may never have fallen back in love with running, and I may never have been able to call myself an Olympian. But it was a completely different pressure. When I race in the Northeast, although they're not always big, massive races or anything, you have a different type of pressure that people expect you to win. Whereas if I race a London Marathon, they don't expect you to win. I can go to a World Championships and they don't expect us to win. But if I was line up at the Saltwell 10K, they expect us to win. But it's that pressure that they expect that. But at the same time, it's like, it's not such a high pressure that I put on myself. Going into a London Marathon, I'll put pressure on myself to be first Brit or to run a certain time. And there's a lot more riding on that, because there's a lot more at stake, to make a World Championship team or an Olympic team or something like that. Whereas a Saltwell 10K, it's great to be able to say I've won Saltwell for 7 times now. But, if I didn't win, there's nothing kind of spoiling. I'm still the same, and I can still go out and do it again next year.
It's like a training run in some ways, I suppose, a Saltwell.
Kind of, yeah. And, at the stage that I'm at now, I want to go into these local races and I want to be beat, because it means that the other girls are coming up and coming through, and then I know that I'm leaving kind of the Northeast athletic scene in safe hands, good hands. But it's always great to win, but, it's not the end of the day if you don't.
So you talked about the big races and like the London Marathon there. How do you put to one side all the pressure that's on you and the fact that I suppose a potential failure might result in you not qualifying for Team GB or whatever it is?
Once the gun goes, I forget about all that anyway. It's just, a case of making sure I'm putting one foot in front of the other and keeping an eye on the competition, on the clock and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's kind of those last few days leading into it. And, you start going over all the different scenarios in your head. I remember back in 2016, it was the trials for Rio Olympics. I had the qualifying time and literally people were like, handing us a plane ticket. Said, you've booked it already. There's nobody going to beat you. That's yours. And I was just like, no, it's 26.2 mile. Anything can happen. I could get food poisoning. I could come down with a cold. I could step on a bottle at 16 mile and twist my ankle, And although I had all these people saying to us, you're a shoo-in, it's pretty much guaranteed, I wasn't listening to them because I knew what was at stake and I couldn't get ahead of myself. I've gotten ahead of myself before in marathons and it's all gone wrong. So, yeah, I was just kind of like, I was confident in my own ability. I was confident in the training I'd done. And it was just a case of shutting off everybody, apart from maybe one or two that you trusted and they knew what to say to you anyway. And, they were just kind of reaffirming things rather than just putting it on your shoulders. And yeah, just, at the press conference and that, just play it down a little bit about how confident you were or what good shape you're in and that sort of thing, just so people don't kind of get too carried away and expect too much from you. But yeah, that day it all turned out great and I got what I wanted out of it. And kind of following on from that, I've been in events before with fellow Olympians and there was one that always sticks in my mind and it was with Max Whitlock and Tonya Crouch, the gymnast and the diver. And it was a load of kids and one of the kids said, at what age did you believe that you could become an Olympian and go to the Olympics? And like Max was like, when I was 7 and I moved to Slovenia and trained with the world's best, and Tonya was similar, kind of when she was 9 and she'd done this. And for me, it was like, when I was 36 and I turned that last corner in the London Marathon, I could see the finish line. It was the only time that I let myself believe I was good enough to make it to the Olympics. And again, that's just the way of me kind of dealing with all the pressure. If you just keep on having that as a dream rather than, a cocky, arrogant self-belief, and then you're not building yourself up as much. And yeah, it's kind of, it always means a great deal, but it lessens the blow if anything does go wrong.
It's really inspiring, actually, the way you're talking about there, about making the team at 36. When you look back at your career and maybe, your late 20s, your early 30s, was there a shift in your mindset at 36 compared to that period or not?
Not really, no. I'd always trained really hard. I think the only thing that had changed kind of 18 months beforehand was I'd made that big jump to pack in work and go full time because I knew it was my last chance to make it. Like I say, I was kind of 35 at the time, 36 when I qualified. And it was it wasn't my whole kind of choice that I made. I'd had an argument with my manager at work because Mike Ashley's Sports Direct had taken over Sweatshop and we had a Sports Direct manager come in and he knew nothing about running. So I ended up having an argument with him and walked out mid-shift. But it's kind of, I always joke and say Mike Ashley's the one I need to thank for making the Olympics, because if he hadn't have taken over, I would have still been working there and wouldn't have went full time. But yeah, it's something I'd been thinking about, and that was the final push that I took, and I knew I had to dedicate everything to it. And then I managed to run the qualifying time in the Berlin Marathon in the September following that, so about 6 months later. And in between that, I pretty much just took myself off to the Pyrenees to live and train and, do everything possible to run that time. But a few days before Berlin Marathon, my granddad was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And my granddad was one of my biggest supporters, my biggest fan. And just before he died in the November, he said to us, like, you know, when you're in Rio, I'll be watching you. And I was like, well, I haven't qualified yet. But, you know, when he died, it was kind of, it then became my sole focus in life. I was going to make those games just to make him proud. So, yeah, it's kind of, that's probably my only, I was doing it for him as well as myself. And that's probably my only mindset change apart from, you know, I was literally living, eating, sleeping, training and, you know, running. So
how different then is your day-to-day since you've gone full-time compared to, you know, your training schedule when you weren't full-time?
The actual training didn't really change that much. What I was given, I had the opportunity to rest and recover better in between. So when I was working at a sweatshop, again, people moan about 0-hour contracts, but it was an ideal setup for me because if I had a heavy week of training, I could work 8 hours. If I had a lower week of training, I could work 40 hours. So it set me up perfect. But I do remember at times when I was doing marathon training and there was one Sunday morning, I'd literally ran a marathon in training and then went into work for 6 hours on the afternoon. So, you know, it's not ideal. And as soon as I finished work, that meant, you know, those 6 hours could have been spent horizontal on the couch recovering instead. And it gave us more time to, you know, take myself off to the Pyrenees or to Kenya or wherever I wanted to go for training. But obviously, on the other hand, you're not working, so you're not earning the money. So it's kind of, you know, luckily I had enough savings in the bank to tide us over financially. And I initially did it for 2 years. I said, right, I've got enough money to go 2 years and I still haven't returned back to work yet. So, but, you know, it is like, yeah, your training load doesn't actually change if you do it sensibly and you do it correctly. It's your rest and your recovery and, you know, you're taking care of the little things like getting a solid 8-9 hours sleep, then an afternoon nap, and you're not getting up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to get your training done. You're not in the gym still at 9 o'clock at night. Everything's, you know, you're training 9 till 5 and getting everything you need to do and getting the correct nutrition in at the correct times instead of, you know, eating pick and mix during an afternoon shift instead.
Yeah, and you'll be on your feet as well, like working somewhere like sweatshop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was I going to say? I noticed quite a lot with different athletes and in different sports when they take that jump from like amateur or to like going full time as a professional, how that can be like added pressure in itself. But it sounds like to you fully embraced that and just it's kicked you on a level or two.
Yeah, I think because I was training full time whilst I was still working, and like I say, it was very flexible working. So most of the time, it was probably only part-time hours that I was working. But yeah, as soon as you say I'm a full-time athlete, there is that added pressure on you. But I was already at a level where, you know, I'd run a 2:31 marathon, I'd done a Commonwealth Games, I'd done a few World Championships. So it wasn't like I was still trying to make that big breakthrough. The only one that I had left to do was the Olympics. And, you know, it's kind of like, because it's the Olympics, a lot of people, they'll say, oh, you go to the Olympics, and, you know, but they never really take it serious because it's such a big scale and, you know, the pinnacle. So you didn't really have that extra pressure of kind of everybody, oh, you go to the Olympics. Like maybe it's in 2012, it would have been worse because it was the London Home Olympics. But I think pretty much a lot of the British public didn't realise that the Olympics existed in 2016. So, yeah, there wasn't quite as much pressure on you there. And, you know, there was always, again, the pressure that I put on myself because I need to make it work financially as well as anything else. And, you know, my parents had given us a lot of support and everything, and I didn't want to let them down. But, yeah, it was kind of, it wasn't such a huge jump to me because I was already on that level and it was just a case of maintaining it.
Can you just tell us a little bit about this, the world record and the Ultra 50K? Because obviously it's such a long distance. You must have a tendency to like get ahead of yourself at times. How do you
That was the one thing that I didn't do. So it's not actually that much further than a marathon. It's less than 5 miles more. And that was the way I was kind of getting my head around it. And it's something I'd looked at a few years back, and I didn't look at the world record. I'd looked at the British record. That was 3 hours 16. And I looked at kind of my training runs. I'll train up to 27 miles when I'm training for the marathon. And I was like, my training runs, if I carry on for a few more miles, I can break the British record just in training. So it gave us something else to aim for once I'd achieved everything else over the marathon. And I went into that race, and my big focus for that race was to win. It was World Championships, and I only ever intended to do one ultra, so I wanted to win it. And obviously I'd never raced beyond the marathon. I'd trained up to 30 miles. I'd done 2 30-mile runs in training. And I was very conscious of going off too hard and blowing up because, although I say it's less than 5 miles more, that's, it's half an hour of running. It's still a long way more when you've already ran 26 miles. And I was running along and I was feeling great. And to judge my effort levels, it was a mixed race, so the men and women went off the same time. It was laps. It was like 5 times around this lap. And every time the men were going down one side and I was going up the other, I would shout over to our guys, "Go on, lads, you're looking really good, you're going strong," and that. And every one of them after were like, "How on earth could you do that?" We were like, literally, we couldn't even reply saying cheers or thanks. But that was my way of judging my effort levels. And I knew if I could speak like that, I wasn't, 95% eyeballs out. So I should still have enough left to not blow up in those last 5 miles. And then coming around the last corner with 4.5K to go, the team manager shouted to us, "You're going to smash the world record." And I kind of looked over, I went, "What is the world record?" I didn't have a clue because I'd never looked at it because, you don't go into your first ever ultra and go, "Let's break the world record." So I didn't even look at it, and I didn't know what it was, what pace it was or anything. And then as soon as she shouted that, I just literally, put my head down and ran as hard as I could for those last 4.5K. And crossed the line, and I took, I think it was 80 seconds off the world record, which had previously stood for 31 years. So, it wasn't something I even looked at, never mind expected from that race, but it was an added bonus, and it definitely means that I don't have to do another one now because I've ticked all the boxes.
You haven't got the bug then to do another one and go further?
Not at all.
Yeah, you get some people who love the 100Ks and stuff like that, don't they?
I do think I could have gone faster if I knew what the record was and I thought I was capable of breaking it. I could have focused a bit more and gone faster. But, I've went 80 seconds faster than any of the females ever done before. And I know there's women out there could literally do that in training. You look at Bridget like Kosgei, and she runs 2:13 for the marathon. She could easily just jog on and run sub 3. In fact, run 2:45 probably. But they've never done it, so you never know. She could blow up in those last 5 miles. I'm the only one that's attempted it and done it, so I'll take that. And if somebody had went out, this time last year and ran faster, I might have been tempted to go back and try and get that record back. But at the minute, it's a good thing about the pandemic that's going on. It stopped people from attempting it. So if we can just have that for a few more years over 50K. But, even if they did go out tomorrow and break that world record again, I'd still be in the record books as a former world record holder, world champion, and you could never take that away.
Definitely. No, it's an amazing achievement with all the hard work, and I can imagine the sacrifices you've had to do to make it happen.
Yeah. I don't like the term sacrifices, but there's like a lot of, I call them choices, because to me, I'm not sacrificing anything. You know, me giving up going to a party or something isn't for the greater good of somebody else. It's for my own benefit. So it's the choice that I make to do that. It's the same as I made the choice to go full time. I make the choice to spend 3 months of the year over in the French Pyrenees, where, you know, life's really hard having to run around the mountains and eat almond croissants. But, you know, there's no sacrifices involved.
Yeah, no, thanks for picking us up on that one. It's a good point, to be fair, because anybody who's got any dreams, any goals, you want them to ultimately take control and focus on the things that they can do. So no, I like that. In terms of goals, because this show is going to be going out in the new year, are you someone who looks like 12 months ahead and sets goals? And if you do, what's your process?
In normal circumstances, yes. I normally, you know, in the past they tend to be kind of 4-year goals, obviously for an Olympic cycle, and smaller goals in between that to get you to that main big goal. I am kind of, you know, as much as I love running, and I do sometimes still need small individual goals on the horizon, just to get us out there, you know, especially this time of year where the rain's lashing the window and you're just nice and cozy in bed and you don't want to get out, but, you know, you'll think, I've got a race in 6 weeks, I've got to go and do that session, I've got to go and, you know, things like doing the gym or doing your rehab. It's the little bits that, you know, they're not the most glamorous and the most entertaining, but you need to get them done. So just having that focus. And a lot of people say to us, how do you keep your motivation? And, you know, I'm not 100% motivated, you know, 365 days of the year. There's a lot of times when your motivation will dip and will disappear, but that's when the commitment comes in. You know, you make a commitment to yourself or to your coach or your team or whatever, and you say, this is what I'm going to aim to do, and, you know, this is how I'm going to do it. And yeah, motivation might dip, but your commitment pretty much never wanes. You know, you've got that 100% commitment, and that's what you're aiming for. So yeah, it's normally a 6-week goal, 3-month goal, 6-month goal, and it normally ends up with that 4-year kind of let's make an Olympic Games. But obviously not everybody has that high hopes of an Olympic Games, so it can be anything. You know, it could be you want to run a certain time at the London Marathon, but again, it's not probably even going to happen in one marathon cycle. You might need 2 or 3 to get it right. So, you know, a lot of people nowadays, they expect everything to happen yesterday, and they haven't got the patience to look long term. They'll start a training program and 3 weeks later they can't see any improvement, so they just quit and they'll stop instead of giving it time. And I do some coaching myself, and that's the one thing I'll say to clients when I take them on. You've got to give it at least a 3 months kind of bedding in period before you can notice anything. You know, you see people on Facebook all the time saying, I've got this race next week, I want to run 40 minutes for 10k, what should I do in training? And you're like, well, far too late, because it takes 3 weeks for a training adaptation to take place. So it's whatever you did 3 weeks ago that's going to matter, not what you do in these next 7 days. And yeah, just have those little goals written down. And I used to put them on like things on post-it notes on the fridge. So every time I went in the fridge for something, it reminded us of why I was doing this, and, you know, put them on my bedroom wall. So as soon as I woke up in the morning, I'd see what those goals were, and it just gives us that kick to get out of bed.
I like that. That's some nice little tips there for the listeners. One thing I've noticed when you talk about people being a bit short-sighted, I suppose, and giving up too easily is, like, when people set goals, they often don't really think about the downsides, some of the setbacks that are likely to follow. Because let's face it, we'll pick up injuries, don't we? You'll have races which don't go according to plan and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think kind of this year has highlighted it the most, because obviously, you know, 99% of races have been cancelled or postponed. And when they were all starting to get cancelled, so I know how gut-wrenching it is that, you know, like the London Marathon and all that kind of stuff were getting cancelled. But you just saw everybody going, what's the point? I'm doing all this training and all this running, and now my race is cancelled. You're like, yeah, but why are you doing it? Are you just doing it for that race, or are you doing it because you actually enjoy the process of going out there and running and training and, getting to see how good you can be? And even if you don't get to run this year's London Marathon, there is going to be another London Marathon at some point. You might have to wait 18 months or 2 years or whatever, but you are going to get that chance. And you can also just go out and run 26 miles around the streets. Okay, you don't have the big buzz of the London Marathon or whatever, but there's nothing stopping you from doing that. And yeah, I think a lot of people they get so focused on the end goal, they forget to enjoy the process of what it takes to get there. And if you kind of put more of a focus on enjoying the process, yes, you might get injured or whatever, but it lessens the blow if something does go wrong, because you're not focused on this, sub 3 hour marathon and everything can go brilliant and then something wrong on the day, which a lot of times it does happen in the marathon especially. So yeah, it's just kind of like, changing your mindset of everything being so kind of end goal orientated and, have little steps along the way. And we all get injuries, we all get setbacks, we'll have a race where it doesn't go to plan. But if it's you tune up half marathon, that doesn't go to plan, so what? It's your tune up half marathon, it's not the end of the day. It's better that one doesn't go to plan than you go race. And that was a big thing that I learned from Charlie Spedden, and he speaks a lot about it in his book. And it's kind of, everything that you do leading up to that race, if you get success from it, it's an added bonus. But you've got to be able to tick the steps off and enjoy those steps along the way.
I really like that. And it sounds like you're able to just keep a bigger picture sort of perspective around things as well, where,
yeah,
like you say, some people just...
I used to frustrate the hell out of my old coach, Lindsay Dunn, because I'd go down on a Tuesday and I'd literally have the worst session ever. Like, the girls that I normally beat by 3 minutes in a 10K, they'd be beating us over 800 metre reps. But come the weekend, I'd go out there and I'd have a brilliant race. And he'd be like, how do you do it? Most athletes that they'd kind of beat themselves up over that bad session, they'd let them affect them mentally, and then it would just totally throw the race. I'm like, well, it's one session, If you have a series of bad sessions, yes, then start to worry and look at things. But if you have one bad session, well, so what? And it's better that you've had that bad session, on the Tuesday down at the training track rather than the Saturday on the racetrack. You've just got to put it in a box, close that box off somewhere in your mind and just get on with it. And then once you've done your race, then look back and go, well, why wasn't that session the best? Maybe it was my body telling us to slow down and ease off and conserve energy for the weekend. Maybe I was just a little bit overtired, and if I'd been feeling good, I would have run too hard then and then ruined my race at the weekend. But yeah, you've just got to kind of look at the bigger picture and, not dwell on the little things in life.
Control the controllables, they say, don't they? That's a big thing.
Yeah.
It's been fascinating chatting to you. You've shared loads of great stuff for people there. To break it down, what would the three key takeaways be for the listeners?
I think the big one, and it's kind of, I start to not like the saying in a way because it's used so much, but to enjoy the process, enjoy what you're doing and don't get too caught up in the outcome. Because if you're too outcome focused, you're then going to put a lot of pressure on yourself and a lot more things can go wrong. Whereas if you just enjoy, going out for your run and whatever, and, especially in running, I find a lot of the time, if people just leave the watches at home, that's when they run the best, because they're not being dictated to by a few numbers on the wrist. They just run the way they feel and they're happy in the running and they run well. So yeah, just kind of focus on the process rather than the outcome, and the outcome will just look after itself. Other ones, again, just a similar theme, just remember your why. Why are you doing it? Most of the time it's because you enjoy what it is that you're doing. If you're not enjoying it, then why exactly are you doing it? If I wasn't enjoying running 120 miles a week, I'd be like, well, why am I even doing this? And every time something did go wrong or something was tough, I'd stop. But yeah, remember your why, whether that's because you've made a promise to somebody, you've got set yourself a challenge or whatever. And I think the third one is kind of always believe in yourself. So, for me, along the way, I've had a lot of people tell us that I wasn't good enough and I couldn't do things. But I've always had that belief deep down that I was good enough and I could do it. And every time somebody said to me that I wasn't good enough or I didn't have what it takes, that would just add fuel to that fire. And, I love proving people wrong. So I'd go out there and I'd prove them wrong and, give them the two fingers when I was standing on the start line and realising, it hasn't got this now. But yeah, you've got to have that self-belief, but you've also got to be very careful that you don't cross the line into kind of overconfidence, arrogance, cockiness. Because again, going back to my first hour marathon, I stood on that line, I was far too cocky. I was trying to run, I think it was 2:38, which is about 6-minute mile in. And I was like, that's easy, I can do that, no problem. Went off at like 5:50 pace. And I was like, I got to 6 mile, I was like, actually, this is quite hard. By 16 mile, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? And I wanted to stop and cry, but I made myself finish because, it was my own stupid fault. I was too cocky and I went off too fast. And the last thing I was going to do that day was, walk off the course and, not learn the lesson. So, yeah, have self-belief, but don't get too cocky.
Yeah, sport's got a funny way of kicking you in the teeth when you do get a little bit cocky, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The thing about self-belief there as well, you obviously managed to keep things quite simple, and like you say, where you've focused on just proving people wrong, whereas some people can just get in their own heads, and then that sort of, Steve Peters will talk about the chimp. It'll be chirping away there and telling them they can't do it. Yeah, I try to say, just forget the story you're telling yourself and just get on with it.
Yeah. And I remember speaking to Steve Peters before and, discussing things like this. And one of the things that stood out with us for that conversation was when he turned around and went, what's the big deal? It's running in circles. What's so hard? And it's true, people just blow things up to be so hard and set things kind of on such a pedestal that they talk themselves out of being able to achieve it. But if you've done the training and your training suggests that you can achieve X, then, get it out of your head that you can't, because it's so hard. Because at the end of the day, all you need to do in running is put one foot in front of the other at a certain pace. It's not really that hard. We haven't got opponents like in football who can come along and take our legs away and pinch the ball or whatever. It's you and, your biggest competitor is what's between your ears. And, you've got to get in that positive mindset and just go for it.
I love the positivity. It's a nice way to finish. So I appreciate you taking the time out and chatting to me today. It's been great.
No problem.
I'd like to give a big thanks to today's sponsors, Functional Intelligent Training, who are a sports injury clinic located in Gosford, near Newcastle upon Tyne, and specialise in athlete development, nurturing future champions, strength and conditioning support, and excellent rehabilitation services. Thank you for listening to Demystifying Mental Toughness today. To sign up for tips and advice to help you be the best that you can be, go to www.sport-excellence.co.uk and sign up to the Mental Edge newsletter.